the investigation led me to Las Vegas. And that's why I find this whole thing so intriguing, because, there was a retired L.A. or Las Vegas cop who was actually camping with a friend of mine, and they started drinking, and they were talking about the murder of Tupac, and a bunch of new truths came out, which gave me some real insight into how Las Vegas actually works with with the whole thing, and how corrupt they are. And then
I don't doubt it.
And another person that I got to interview was Detective Gordon Martins, who was 31 years with Las Vegas police. And he's the one that said, if you have a connect and the right amount of money, you can get anything you want in Las Vegas.
I'm sure. I'm certain that when these guys came into the room, what you're seeing on the camera, that's what it was. So, I think it's not as complicated as people think, and it's way more complicated than people think. Both
especially
at the same time.
Especially when it leads to the Saudis. And when you think about it, we just had this journalist kidnapped and likely killed, and that pretty much got just completely swept under the carpet.
Well, not necessarily. Hang on. Lindsey Graham is calling for the removal of MBS. Lindsey Graham is mouthing off.
Well, okay.
And I'm not sure how the president is going to respond to that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a $110 billion arms deal that's pending, and...
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
You've got guys like Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul, who are going to challenge the president from his own side of the aisle on this topic. And the reason is MBS looks like a little bit of a madman at 33 years old, chopping guys into pieces.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they're not telling anybody how frequently this guy is almost assassinated.
Yeah.
And because they keep this stuff under wraps, his behavior looks erratic. It looks like it's a power grab. It looks, that's not what it is. This guy's just trying to ward off the barbarians at the gate. They're trying to kill him.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Adnan Khashoggi. This is Adnan Khashoggi's nephew. You remember Adnan Khashoggi?
Of course.
Yeah, all right. This is his nephew. He is a Wahhabi sympathizer. He is a sympathizer of the old guard, the older cousins that feel like they were pushed aside, and they were. We're going from an 83, 84-year-old ruler to a 33-year-old ruler, 34-year-old ruler. So that means all the guys who are in their 40s and 50s who thought they had a chance at the throne, they're pissed beyond belief. That's what you're dealing with. And in that world, it's kill or be killed.
Yeah.
There's you don't get to vote for Crown Prince.
No, and you have to consolidate your power quickly, or you'll find out that you're removed.
Correct. And I'm certain that President Trump's position on anything happening in Saudi Arabia or between Saudi Arabians, behind closed doors, his position is, I trust the king, I trust MBS, and I trust MBS's brother KBS, the ambassador. That's it. Yeah. I don't know any of these other guys. I don't trust any of them. And if the king or the prince tells me this guy was trying to get us killed, I believe him.
Well, and
that's what I think the real position is.
And when you look at what happened... Yeah.
Yeah, in public, he's got a, this is terrible, blah, blah,
Of course.
A little bit of saber rattling, but I think behind closed doors, I think he fully understands that, this guy was a traitor. This guy had something to do with one of these coup d'etat attempts. He might have been funding it. He might have been. So I trust MBS isn't just chopping guys up because they're journalists. It's not what's happening. There's a whole lot more to the story here. And if you look at, so here's the thing that really gets me upset. When you look at the research being done by the Brookings Institute, Bruce Riedel, you look at the research that's come out from some of the other think tank and strategic consulting companies, right?
Yeah.
They completely missed this. Completely missed it. Completely missed what's happened here. Yeah, now, is there an alternative report just for top clients? I don't know.
Well,
but the fact that these guys have all missed this is just mind-boggling to me.
Do you think that intelligence knows what really happened in Las Vegas?
Absolutely. I think they know who I am, and I think they know where I live. Absolutely. There's no question about that.
So do you?
No doubt.
You think President Trump's been debriefed on this?
I think he knew. By breakfast the next morning, he knew who did it. And
that there was a cover-up.
Well, here's the other thing. When he went and had that sit-down with Sheriff Lombardo introduces Levi Hancock and said, this is the guy who engaged the suspect. Levi Hancock is sitting on the end next to Bitsko. You know the footage I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All right. He's sitting on the end, sitting next to Bitsko. The president is there with Melania. Joe introduces Levi Hancock. Levi Hancock is Zebra 20. The Zebra call signs are in order of seniority in Las Vegas SWAT. There's 37 guys on the SWAT team. There's a red team and a blue team. Levi Hancock is Zebra 20. That means there's 19 other guys with more experience as operators than Levi Hancock. So if you think Levi Hancock is a badass, if you think he's Captain America, you haven't met the 19 guys that have been there longer than him.
Yeah.
Where were those 19 guys?
Yeah, that's a big question.
They said Zebra 20. They said Zebra 20 and Zebra 22. Brett Brosnahan. Why is Brett Brosnahan not mentioned in the FID report? Right, so we got 19 members of SWAT with more experience than Levi Hancock, completely unaccounted for.
Yeah. Definitely
right,
a huge unanswered question.
And that's where just recently I became aware of what I believe to be a second target on the runway. Right, and that's that citation that came in from Sacramento. I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of those videos.
I did. I saw that video. And that's beyond the tanks.
Correct. And that opens up a whole new can of worms. There's a whole new aspect of the case that everybody brushed under the rug, that the tower saw people fleeing the concert on the runways and thought that those were shooters. No. They stopped traffic. They turned the lights off on runway 19R.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a request to turn off the lights on the runway. And the tower says, okay, lights are off. All right, so that's significant. That's not because there's some pedestrians running around.
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole new can of worms about, oh my God. So there's two targets. There's a target at the Four Seasons, and there's a target on the runway. And then, in this new video that we just released today, focusing on the Corey Langdon footage, the taxi driver footage, and the route around the venue, you start realizing they were up near the MGM Grand and the Tropicana almost just as much as they were by Mandalay Bay. It's just the people who were getting shot at associate Mandalay Bay because of the height. It's the tallest object nearby, and they knew they were being shot from above. Right, so everybody assumes it's coming from Mandalay Bay. And then you see the reflections off the building, and you say, wait, I see something. And you see the reflections of the helicopters, and you see the shots that appears to be coming from Mandalay Bay. So that's why people thought the shots were coming from Mandalay Bay. And in fact, 8 shots did. 8 shots came from 32-134. That's about the only thing from that FIT report that makes some sense.
Yeah. And then what about the zip lines?
Again, this is another strange thing. It's like we hear this conversation going on. I think it's 3 different police officers. And one says, oh, yeah, I see it. And then the other goes, oh, yeah, by the moon. And there's the female officer. So I think there's 2 male officers and a female officer that see it. Excuse me. I don't see the zip line, but I hear their conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are police officers. They're trained observers. You know, and it's not like she let it go. They kept talking about it. So, hard to tell. You know, hard to know what the heck is going on here. But the sheriff says we think he had a plan to get away. What the hell would he say that for?
Yeah, a guy barricaded in a hotel room.
Yeah, what did you find? A base jumping parachute? You know, what makes you say that, Joe?
Yeah, and that's never disclosed.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then you hear there's a zip line. Now, I don't think there was a zip line coming from those rooms necessarily, but who the hell knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But what the hell do you need 3 drills for?
I mean, that's crazy time. 3 drills.
Yeah. So the whole thing. So now the big issue is our press in the United States has been compromised due to the Smith-Mundt repeal in 2012.
Yeah.
And as a result, the government gets to go into places like the New York Times and the Washington Post and Fox News and say, you can't say this. You can't cover that. You have to edit this out. And it's illegal. And I don't think the American public necessarily feels that that's in our best interest.
Well, I think a lot of people are on to the fact that the news is not truthful.
Because we put something into law that allows the government to manipulate the news. I look at Tucker Carlson, and I can tell the guy's upset about this attack. And on December 5th, he was in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then the next night, he's back in D.C. He wasn't planning. They didn't go to Vegas just for that one night, but they wouldn't give him a permit. And he was sent packing.
Yeah.
Right? So now, is he getting pressure from the White House? Is he getting pressure directly from the White House, he and Hannity, that we need you guys to drop this right now?
Well, or maybe it's not even the White House. I mean, it could be our CIA.
Well, I think in the case of Tucker and Hannity, it might come directly from the White House. In the case of the New York Times and the Washington Post, I think you might be right. I think they may have guys embedded there that just have to audit what they're putting out. Because, you know, they're editing out, the Associated Press and the New York Times all are editing out the footage where Brett Brosnahan goes to the window. Right? So, you know, if it was innocuous, why would you edit it out?
Well, that's a smoking gun right there.
Right. If the window was broken, wouldn't that be the magic moment? Is, look, he opens the curtain and... Right? Why would you not show that part?
Well, and then it's corroborated with the BBC footage.
Correct. Right.
And that BBC footage, I mean, you can just see plain as day that that window is not broken.
It looks exactly the same as the other suites. Right? Yeah. So now, I'm sort of taking the position, this whole malfeasance thing, why aren't the people of Nevada, of Clark County, demanding the impeachment of Sheriff Joe? Based on this evidence, this is malfeasance. Malfeasance is grounds for impeachment. we've got forged evidence. We've got a manufactured crime scene with the 1,050 rounds, the brass shell casings, the hammer, probably the spotting scope. Who the hell puts a spotting scope in the middle of the living room floor? What good is it doing over there? Who put it there? If you have a spotting scope, it's right next to your rifle.
Yeah.
And who's zeroing in? Nobody's zeroing anything in at 10 o'clock at night with a spotting scope.
Well, and
it doesn't make sense.
Usually
it's over the top.
A sniper works with a spotter.
Correct. So if it's a two-man team, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Right? But somebody went over the top with the crime scene, with the hammer, right?
Yeah.
It's too much. And this guy, Charles Walton, who I think is like a NASA employee or ex-NASA employee, had a YouTube channel that they shut down. He was the one who came up with this theory that one of the officers in the room, when they were breaking the window, staging the crime scene, his conscience couldn't let it go. He couldn't go with it. And that one of those officers is the one that placed that rifle over Paddock's leg on purpose to send a message to the world at large. This guy could not have suicided.
Yeah.
And simply by placing that rifle over his shin like that, the cop knew this is going to get people's attention. The truther community is going to look at this and go, whoa, 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 whoa. This can't be a suicide. How does a guy fall underneath his own rifle?
Yeah.
Right? So that was his theory, that one of the cops, as a way of signaling the outside world as they were staging this crime scene, probably right after they broke the window and dumped the box of shells on the floor, placed this rifle over Paddock's leg right before the pictures were taken in order to trigger everybody's spidey sense that something's wrong here. This can't be. You can't kill yourself and have the rifle be over your leg. So that was his theory. And, I stayed focused on everything that was going on outside rather than the suite. I never trusted those photographs in the first place. I figured they were leaked too quickly. Something's up. It's like, these are the cards Aaron Rouse wants me to see.
Yeah.
Right? So if he's letting me peek at his cards, he wants me to see those cards.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not buying. I'm going to stay focused on what's happening outside, and that's what we did.
Well, and how many cops had body cams that night, and how many have we actually seen? What percentage have we actually seen?
Well, the ones that, so the body cams that matter are the officers that entered 32-135, and the only officers whose body cam we've seen from the inside of 135 is Bitsko. And so we know that there's 8 officers according to the FIT report. But what about Corey? What about Brett Brosnahan? They're not mentioned in the FIT report, and yet we see them on the video. Well, what's that? How are they not mentioned in the FIT report? And they talk about Sergeant Matchko. We see Matchko outside. We see Brett Brosnahan taking command of the situation. It's Brett Brosnahan that goes to the window. Zebra 22.
Yeah.
Not mentioned in the FIT report. And no body camera footage. Where's the body camera footage from Lieutenant Corey Moon? We don't have that either. So we've got no footage from any of the ones that they list, right? Donnelly, Magsaysay, the guys who they list in the report. We don't have their footage. And we don't have the footage from Brett Brosnahan, who they don't list. And we don't have the footage from Corey Moon, who they don't list, etc., etc. So the only footage they've shown us is Bitsko, because his was pointing at the ceiling, up his nose. And they figured, well, this is the worst we've got. We can let them see this. And even with that, we were able to determine that as Brett Brosnahan goes to the window, there's no way he's walking on 1,000 spent casings.
Yeah.
And if the window's broken, that means that there's a hammer under his foot. We don't see that either. So And the fact that people won't address just the simple fact of, is the window broken? Is it or isn't it? Can't we have that dialogue? That's a conspiracy theory dialogue? I don't see any evidence that that window's broken.
Well, especially not with the BBC. And there's numerous other video tapes or people that are, using their cameras, that have put stuff out that you've identified, and the window does not appear to be broken in any of those.
We just don't see any evidence of that until the second sortie by the Vegas police helicopter, N911WY. So when it comes back the second time, we have seen that footage. In that footage, we see the window broken. But in their first sortie, there's no evidence of it. So if there's no evidence of it being broken, I don't think it was broken.
Yeah.
And then we have this notion of shooting at the tanks. 8 shots, 6 missed.
Well,
right? How do you miss an object that's 48 feet tall and 78 feet wide? That's the size of an apartment building.
Yeah.
Do you know that guys go to the range right near there and shoot at 700 yards regularly? But the target is the size, it's like a 10-inch target, a 12-inch target. And they're shooting at 700 yards. This is 48 feet tall, 78 feet wide.
Yeah.
And he missed 6 out of 8 shots?
Now, did you see that Jason had gone to those tanks and one of those bullets is actually facing up under the lip? I don't know if you had ever seen that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We believe there's no way that shot came from that room.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Right, somebody put those rounds into that tank 2 a.m., 3 a.m. after the area had been completely secured. And again, it was to keep people from looking at what might they be shooting at from this window. They were not shooting at the tanks. There's no way you miss them 6 times.
Yeah.
Right? So they're shooting, and then you look at the sealed warrants, and the sealed warrants say nothing about murder, nothing about capital murder. It talks about destruction in an airport, into aircraft. Those were the charges. Forget the interstate transport of guns. Forget that. That's a ATF type thing, right? So forget the interstate transport of guns. Well, the charges that were in the warrant that they went to the judge at 3 a.m. had to do with shooting at an airport. Why is that? They weren't shooting at the tanks.
Yeah.
You can't miss the tanks. It's ridiculous. I could shoot behind my back, one-handed with the flu, and hit the tanks. You could hit the tanks with a pistol, Michael.
Yeah.
At 700 yards. You could hit them with a pistol.
Yeah.
All right? At 48 feet high. So, don't tell me you missed the tank 6 times.
So
they weren't shooting at the tanks.
I guess the big question is or was MBS in Las Vegas that night?
And you know what? Like in the movie The Godfather, I don't know how much it matters whether he was there or not. And whether he was at the Four Seasons, whether it was him or KBS, his brother, the impact would have been very similar had they killed his brother, the ambassador, right? And then the other question is, and this is something I haven't done a video on yet, but when you watch this most recent one on Corey Langdon, you see how much the helicopters are up near the MGM Grand. There's another major property up there that nobody knows about, nobody talks about, called the Mansion. And the Mansion is the most exclusive place in Vegas. So when Floyd Mayweather wins his boxing match and wins $100 million, this is where he sleeps at night, is at the Mansion. Oh, MBS at the Mansion? Was MBS at the Four Seasons? Were these guys also looking for a target in a mansion? Nobody mentions the mansion. Nobody mentions the Four Seasons. They're kicked out of the discussion entirely by the FBI.
Well, and in light... in light of what's happening right now and what happened in November right after the shooting, in Saudi Arabia, I mean, it was basically a complete roll-up of the competition.
Absolutely. He can't tolerate it. He's, these guys have been planning these coups, these coup d'etat attempts, and obviously they're well-funded and well-connected. Right? Did you see the footage from April of the attack over the palace in Riyadh?
No, I did not see that.
All right. So that's I'll probably have to put something together. So there was an attack on one of the palaces in Riyadh, and for 4 or 5 weeks after, MBS was unaccounted for. No photos, and then there were a whole bunch of articles. Was he injured in an attack? Was he shot and recuperating? He was unaccounted for about 5 weeks, and then he came out of hiding, so to speak. And one of the rumors was there was this attack at one of the palaces. Was he injured? Was he hit? So they're trying to kill this guy around every turn, and they're not going to stop. And that's why second-guessing stuff like this Khashoggi guy, you just don't know the whole story. This Khashoggi guy could be financing, the worst elements of Al-Qaeda. And nobody talks about Al-Qaeda anymore. It's like Al-Qaeda is not hip. Al-Qaeda has become the MySpace of the terrorist world.
Well, I mean, we're backing Al-Qaeda in Syria. I mean, that's the issue. And
I think we're backing ISIS. We're backing ISIS in Syria.
Well, I mean, it's Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I mean, they're both there.
But the Al-Qaeda that I think of is the old guard that financed bin Laden. So bin Laden had his own money, but bin Laden, al-Zawahiri, that crew was getting a lot of money from Wahhabi Saudis, right? From big money, conservative Wahhabi leadership. That's where the money was coming from, and that's what was in the 28-page report after September 11th.
Which I read.
And so when Trump goes over there for his first trip in March of 2017, that's his first trip overseas, that was the discussion, was who are these guys? Who are these guys that funded this stuff? These are your cousins? Who are they? Because they got to go.
Yeah.
And the bin Salman family explained to Trump, these people want to kill us. We're reformers. We want to try and modernize the place. And they want to kill us just like they want to kill you. They see us as strange bedfellows, and they want to kill us and kill you. So we have a common enemy. And that's, to me, that's what's happening here. So I believe in MBS. I love what the guy's doing. I love what he stands for. But he's being unfairly judged and criticized because nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows this guy. He has withstood how many coup d'etat attempts in the last 18 months. God only knows. These guys keep sweeping them all under the rug.
Yeah.
So it makes his actions look rash.
Yeah. So how many videos did you actually look through in order to find the helicopters and, everything that you've put together over this last, little over a year?
I don't know. I mean, certainly a fair amount. I've produced over 150 videos in less than a year. And now we have over 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, a total of over 2 million views on the videos. So people are interested, but at the same time, if you look at the New York Times versions of the story, their videos have 10 million views, 9 million views. So people are interested, but they're not getting access necessarily to this alternative perspective of what has happened. And I find that rather strange. YouTube had some articles, I don't know if you heard about this, but shortly after the shooting, YouTube changed its search algorithms because too many videos were coming up saying that this was a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And YouTube publicly said that we're changing our search algorithms as a result because people are getting too much fake news served to them and conspiracy stuff.
Well, I've seen your tweets censored. And
Yep.
so even Twitter sometimes censors your tweets when you have...
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Because I'll see it. It'll say, that, this tweet contains offensive material. And, and there's no reason for that. Nothing that you've put out is offensive.
Well, certainly not gratuitous, right? And,
No.
Is anybody thinking that this Twitter world is a world of children? Does everybody think that people here are 6, 7, 8 years old? Is that what they think this is?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that what...
6
who
or
are we
7
trying
or
to
8,
protect?
but, they can't read, so...
Well, who are we trying to protect?
Yeah.
Who is it that they think is using this? They think that this is not adults?
Well, and I have all my settings turned off. I don't want
Yeah.
Twitter censoring anything. And even
Right.
with my settings turned off, I see your stuff sometimes shows up. This contains offensive material.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So what do you think? What do you think are the biggest questions that people have who've been following the case and maybe have heard a little bit about the helicopter stuff or whatever? What do you think are kind of the big questions people have?
well, I think the biggest question is, what do you think the most important piece of evidence that you've uncovered is?
I think possibly it's this most recent video, this Corey Langdon video, and I'll tell you why. This is really the first time we've been able to document a helicopter traveling in a northerly direction, heading from approximately the Mandalay Bay hotel area, crossing the boulevard, heading from west to east, and then heading northbound. And this is really the only footage where we see a helicopter heading northbound. And by triangulating the footage, we've been able to establish that it most likely was right over the venue or flying right along the side of the venue, right where Melissa Ramirez was killed. So, if in fact that's the case, we have the flight radar data that shows that there's nothing in the area, right? There's nothing in the sky. And we have this aircraft flying northbound. Well, that can't be a jet, right? The jets weren't flying south to north. They were taking off, coming from the east, heading west, and they were landing in that same direction on 26R, 26L. So, can't be a jet. And when we track the speed of it, and we see that the speed of this aircraft is tracking in the 50 to 60 mile an hour range, that can't be a jet. Right?
Yeah.
Jets can't fly 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So, it's a helicopter. So we've got a helicopter flying northbound over the venue, and according to flight radar, there's nobody there. Sundance landed. Maverick hasn't taken off, and the police haven't arrived. So, if the window's not broken in the hotel room, and Bitsko says Paddock has been dead for a minute, meaning he's been dead for an hour or whatever, maybe Paddock didn't shoot anybody. Maybe Paddock was suckered into this to be the guy who brings the guns.
Yeah.
And he was never getting out alive. He was, and if that's the case, you can promise the guy the world. If he's not getting out alive, you can promise him $5 million.
Yeah.
Promise,
$100
give him a
million.
yacht.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
An
He's
island.
not getting out alive. You promise him the world. So if they had no intention of him ever leaving alive, the guy got suckered into bringing a whole bunch of guns to an assassination attempt. He thought he was selling guns, thought he was making $500,000, $1 million. That's all this is. He thought he was selling guns to somebody. Is he guilty of that? Possibly. Right?
Well, and we don't know if that's sanctioned by the U.S. government. I mean, we have no
idea. No, right. And I don't even need to go there, because the truth is, if he didn't shoot anybody, I don't really give a shit that the guy is selling 20. That's a whole different case, a whole different problem. Let the ATF deal with that. I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in who shot 58 people.
Now,
and who shot Stephen Paddock. Who shot Stephen Paddock?
Yeah.
Wasn't Stephen Paddock. He didn't kill himself.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So the guy was set up. He brought the guns to the party. They kill him. And now they got a whole mess of guns up there. Whole bunch of ammo. Whole bunch of guns. What are they doing with this 100 pounds of tannerite? Where's that headed?
Yeah.
That can't be good.
Yeah. And,
so,
it's just too many unanswered questions on that. And what about the autopsies on the people who actually died? Weren't a lot of those gunshots like almost straight down?
Well, I don't know that there's a lot of them, but there's enough of them that literally enter what's called the apex of the skull, which is the tippy top of your head, and then traveled effectively straight down the spinal column. And so that would suggest that they were being shot from directly above. And now that we see a helicopter trajectory that looks like it went pretty much right over the escaping crowd, when you start replaying some of the witness testimony, like Jennifer Byrne. Jennifer Byrne is the blonde-haired lady in the blue dress who appears on Fox, and she said it seems like the further we ran, the closer they were getting. Well, yeah, she's on foot, and they're flying 50, 60 miles an hour. And so if she runs from the stage to the Tropicana, they're at the Tropicana by the time she gets there. So she's right. She's absolutely right. And this explains why people heard shots fired at Hooters, shots fired at New York, shots fired at MGM Grand. In fact, if you're hovering above the MGM Grand, yeah, you can take a couple shots over the Bellagio. You'd probably pop a window. I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Right? You just fly over there real quick and pop, take out a couple windows at the Bellagio. And now you got a panic at the Bellagio, and everybody's looking for a shooter at the Bellagio. There's no shooter at the Bellagio.
Yeah, and there were panics at all those places. There were 911 calls from all those places.
Well, the 911. So here's the interesting twist with this 911 phenomenon. At 11:15 p.m., the switchboards light up like a Christmas tree, and we see a surge of calls at 11:15. I said, what the hell's going on here? Almost as if we had a synchronized, coordinated foot soldier with pistol type cause a little bit of a distraction at 11:15. You're going to have first responders all over the place, and then if they hear shots fired Planet Hollywood, shots fired at the Rio, shots fired at Aria,
Hard Rock.
Right, and that's it. And then put your pistols away, get in your car and drive home. Just a couple shots, that's all we need. Pop, 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 pop. That's it. Get in your car and go home. Don't be a hero.
So, based on what you know about this case, how many people do you think it would have taken to pull this off?
Massive. You're talking about former Saudi intelligence, basically the equivalent of our CIA or Israel's Mossad within Saudi Arabia, is called the General Intelligence Presidency, the GIP. And the former head of the GIP is Mansour bin Mukran's father. Mansour bin Mukran is the guy who died in the helicopter on November 5th. Right, so if his father was the head of the Saudi CIA and used to be the crown prince and was pushed aside for MBS, that means his son, Mansour bin Mukran, was in line to be king. When Mansour bin Mukran's father is pushed aside and no longer is going to be king in order for MBS to be king, Mansour bin Mukran feels like he's been robbed. He was in line for the throne. So the money these guys, they're billionaires. These are billionaires. They have mega yachts. They fly around on helicopters and private jets. This is how these guys, these are the guys with all the Rolls Royces and all the Ferraris and the Arabian horses. So money is not an issue. And now you've got a bunch of retired general intelligence presidency people, former agents, former operatives who were in their 40s or 50s, who were available as contractors. And those people who are sympathetic to the Wahhabi cause and see all this new bin Salman, Saudi Arabia as a threat to everything that they believe, they want them dead. And so if you're a former operative, for you this is a jihad. This is to right the wrongs. They think they're on the right side of this. It's good versus evil, and they think they're right.
Yeah.
So they're willing to kill him.
It's basically a big family feud.
It absolutely is, and too many people were pushed aside. Too many multi-millionaire billionaires. I mean, again, they arrested Bakr bin Laden. These are billionaires. They arrested the most powerful guys in the country. Over corruption? No, come on.
Yeah.
This wasn't about corruption. This was because they tried to have him killed.
Yeah, this is rolling up the competition.
Yeah, and now if we're going to have Lindsey Graham and people start using this Khashoggi event to start challenging MBS, it's not good. Yeah. It's like they don't understand the real backstory. They don't understand what's actually happening. And we're sticking our nose in other people's business, once again, that we really shouldn't be doing. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
So
talk about the Saudi base in Las Vegas.
I'm sorry, the Saudi base?
Well, I mean, where would these helicopters have flown from?
Well, so this is where it gets sticky. So the issue is they buy a lot of stuff from us, right? And there were a lot of deals that were teed up on the table right before this event. Billions of dollars worth of arms deals. And you've got these guys in Congress on both sides of the aisle that don't understand the full story, don't understand the politics, and start pounding their fists on the table and don't want to, for example, I think it's Rand Paul doesn't want to sell them any more arms right now. Doesn't want to sell Saudi Arabia anything else, right? And I don't think they have the facts. I don't think Lindsey Graham has the facts, right? So
yeah, and we never know whether that's just political leverage of,
Right, but it's dangerous stuff, right?
Yeah.
So now they're forcing the president to choose sides, and the president knows what these guys don't know. The president knows what happened in Vegas. So it's a really, really tough situation. It's like because the parties involved opted to cover it up in order to catch the bad guys. It's like many things that we do. We didn't really have an exit plan. We didn't come up with, okay, if we cover it up to catch the bad guys, when do we tell everybody the truth, and how do we do that? And it's like nobody spent any time on that part of it.
Yeah.
It's like maybe we can just sweep it under the rug. Well, here's one of the things that I'm kind of if I'm proud of anything, it's that I think what we're witnessing here is something that we may never have witnessed before. And this is the crowdsourcing of an investigation.
Yeah. Where
the media, the press, hasn't cut it for the American people. The American people said, that's not what we consider investigative journalism. And so people like myself and dozens, hundreds of others have poured thousands and thousands of hours into researching and then producing content around a crime. This event, and this phenomenon that we've been witnessing has never happened. Nothing like this has ever happened before, where hundreds of people working together are trying to solve a crime.
Yeah, and sifting through thousands and thousands of iPhones that were,
Correct.
in various
And that's what makes
places
it
in
possible.
Vegas. Yeah.
That's what makes it possible. That's this crowdsourcing concept, is that, we've got 10,000 subscribers. Our videos have been viewed, anywhere from a couple thousand views up to 250,000 views. And someone will come out of nowhere and say, have you seen this? Look at 220. For example, the zip line. Somebody said, I saw a video and the cop said he saw somebody floating. That was the message I got. That the cop says he sees somebody floating. I'm like, well, what the hell is that? So I go look at that, and before the guy talks about floating, the girl says, is that a zip line? And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is spectacular.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that viewer, if it wasn't for that person, I never would have found that. So this is the crowdsourcing aspect. I guess, it's like we've been able to pull together so many people who care about this event, and their contributions, their work matters. There's a guy who commented just, 2 weeks ago, who, after we had published some of the stuff about what happened inside the suite, inside 32135, and they were talking about Corey, and going to the window, we're trying to figure out, well, who's Corey? Corey's not mentioned in the FIT report. Who the heck is Corey? Who are they talking to? And so we tried to figure that out. Well, this guy comes in and makes a comment and says, oh, Corey's the guy in this hat. The guy at the window is Brett Brosnahan. The guy at the outside door holding the baby, that's Matchgo. It's like, what is this, the barber? This guy knows everybody. Does he work there? So we've got a guy who's a viewer who positively identifies all the cops in the suite. Every one of them. Every one of them. First name, last name, call signs. I wouldn't have been able to do that myself. And so it's sort of like we've created, without trying, a community of people that are all pulling in the same direction. That's why we use this hashtag, #WeAreJohnCullen.
Yeah. Together,
we're guarding, the coasts of this country. And saying, we won't let this stand. We can't allow people to come here and just shoot people in the head and then sweep it under the rug and say this is a lone gunman. I just can't let that stand. I'm sorry. And, I'm sure that some idiot back in Washington thinks I'm violating national security. And I just don't see it that way. I don't see how lying to the American people about how their brothers and sisters were killed, how is that in the best interest of national security? At some point, the truth, it has to be worth more than oil.
Yeah. Yeah, and not just oil. I mean, an arms deal and, other big money, contracts. It's not just oil.
And I'm not trying to upset the arms deal.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I'm a big fan of doing arms deals.
Yeah.
I'd like to, I want to sell these guys everything we make. I want to sell them everything we make. I'm not trying to upset that. I think, again, the American people don't understand. People keep commenting, we need to go bomb these guys. We need to go to war against Saudi Arabia. That's what the administration's afraid of. That's why they cover these things up. You can't go to war with a faction inside a government that's trying to overthrow that government. This is an internal civil war, like you said. It's a civil war inside their family. So who do we go to war with?
Yeah. We don't even know who the good guys and the bad guys are.
Right. We're going to declare war against the cousins. How do you do that? Yeah. So that's the challenge. America wants to, Americans, they want their revenge. I just want justice. I just want the truth to come out, and I want the estates of these billionaires that funded it, I want their private estates to remunerate the victims. The families of the victims that were killed, the people who were shot and injured, and the people who were there. This whole notion of raiding Stephen Paddock's assets is absurd. Stephen Paddock didn't shoot anybody, so that's completely absurd. And the people who really did finance it are billionaires. They need to be held accountable. They are the ones that should be remunerating the people who were killed, the people who were injured, and the people who were traumatized. So that's my end game. If you were shot, I mean, the poor lady that was shot in the eye lost her eye.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, is it unrealistic that she should get $10 million?
No.
Right? So can't we get $10 million from the family, the estate of Mansour bin Mukrin, who was killed in a helicopter crash? Is that an unrealistic expectation if, in fact, he was responsible? That's all I'm after.
And that's probably 1 minute of interest for that entire fortune.
Exactly. And after the Night of 1,000 Swords and MBS went out and, got a lot of money from these guys and let them know who was boss, at the end of the day, the settlement that's needed to take care of these families and to take care of the injured and to take care of the people with PTSD, it doesn't really... I mean, MBS's personal budget to maintain his yacht, Serenity, right, his magnificent boat, he paid $350 million, $400 million for the boat. It's magnificent. It costs him $50 million a year just to maintain the boat. $50 million a year.
Yeah.
All right. So over 10 years, it's $500 million, $500 million to maintain that boat over 10 years. Right. So if we start looking at money like that, and we say, well, is it unrealistic to say your maintenance budget for your yacht, let's set aside about the same amount of money to take care of these families? Is that crazy?
Yeah.
Right? So if we set aside $500 million, could we take care of these victims' families? Can we take care of the people who were, in fact, shot? Can we take care of the people who were there, who are still having nightmares and can't sleep? That's all I'm after. And by the way, the guys who are in those helicopters, flying them and shooting from them, I want the death penalty.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's
or
bring those
send them
guys to
Gitmo
justice.
Yeah, stick them in a box. Yeah, stick them in a box and Gitmo for life. That's fine too. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But again, justice needs to be served for the guys who pulled the triggers. So that's my motivation.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we're also sitting. It's not just a $110 billion arms deal. I mean, there's several $1 trillion in our treasuries that are owned by these guys, and money in our stock market. And so, if they wanted to weaponize, we really have to be careful with how we deal with this situation.
That's why I don't like this. Yeah, that's why I don't like the saber rattling over Khashoggi. To me, the whole Khashoggi thing, it's a false. It's like a red herring. There's guys who've got it in for MBS, and again, because they don't understand what's been going on, and because they made their bed with this old regime decades ago, during the Obama administration, during the Clinton administration, during the Bush administration, relationships were forged. But those relationships now, that's the old guard. Those are the guys that want MBS dead. So that's our problem, and that was the CIA's problem. That's how the CIA missed this. All the CIA's people, all of our contacts, are on the wrong side of this.
Yeah.
And that's why the CIA has egg on their face, as far as I'm concerned with this. They missed this. It's not the FBI's job to prevent this crime. It's the FBI's job to solve this crime. It's the CIA's job to prevent the crime.
Yeah.
And they missed.
Well, and also Las Vegas Metro Police Department, it's their job to also tell us the truth instead of trying to cover this up.
Right. And then you've got guys like Sisolak, who's running for governor now. Right? It's all about the money. It's all, and you saw this with the Tupac investigation. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
It's all about the tourism, right? And nobody wants to talk about what really happened because of what that would do to tourism.
Yeah.
And, again, at some point, the truth has to matter more than the almighty dollar. It just has to.
Yeah.
And, to think that it doesn't, and that people are willing to cover this up, and that people are willing to tell Stephen Paddock's mother that he did this, when they know full well he didn't do this. How do these guys sleep at night? Telling Bruce Paddock your brother did this? God almighty.
Well, clearly they're sociopaths.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to talk about ruthless. Go telling a family that this guy killed 58 people?
Yeah.
You tell that to the guy's mother? I mean, how the hell? It's just mind-boggling to me. Because they know full well the window wasn't broken in the room. That's obvious. You see Newton's looking around in circles like, are we getting set up here? Is this a setup?
Yeah.
So
crowdsourced, I'm sure there's still thousands and thousands of people that have data points in this. How do they reach you?
Well, I'm active on Twitter, right? So at IamJohnCullen on Twitter, and the major content that we put out on YouTube, as long as YouTube keeps the channel up. We did start with a channel called John Cullen, and that was taken down by YouTube unceremoniously with no warnings about 2 or 3 weeks after I started the channel. So the Johnny Hoover channel was launched, I think it was November 9th, starting all over from scratch with no subscribers. And that was a real punch in the stomach to have the entire channel taken down and all the comments just gone, disappeared. And so, dusted ourselves off, launched a new channel called Johnny Hoover on November 9th, and started putting content back up. And that's where you're going to find most of the work. Some of the videos are unlisted. Some of the videos have been made private if too much of the content turns out to have been false positives and things of that nature. Very early on, some of the sightings of the helicopters were in fact Maverick, right? So, or we saw Sundance and we say, oh my God, there's a helicopter over the venue and people are getting shot. And it was Maverick or it was Sundance. And this is before we had the police body cams and were able to synchronize everything. So our understanding of the event, which aircraft are where, which aircraft belong to whom, it's developed so much over the course of the past year, it's hard to contemplate. So some of the older content, if it wasn't accurate, we took that down. But again, there's over 150 videos on YouTube, and I post sort of smaller updates on Twitter. But I think the big issue now is breaking the story.
Yeah.
Right? Why is it that Tucker Carlson, why is it that Sean Hannity, why is it that CNN or 60 Minutes won't touch this? And none of them will say the H word. None of them will say the word helicopter.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's the break that's needed. Somebody on major network or in print needs to ask, were there helicopters shooting people at the event? Because the helicopters change everything. Right? You can have shooters all over the ground, run around in fatigues and black suits and guns and whatever, running around. It doesn't matter. Could be Bloods, could be Crips, could be MS-13. As soon as you have helicopters, it can't be the Bloods, it can't be the Crips, it can't be MS-13. In fact, it really can't be ISIS, because ISIS doesn't have helicopters in the United States.
Yeah.
But we know who does. And that's a country that we sell them to, and we allow them to train on our soil. So if we find, this is like a repeating pattern here. If we know that bad actor Saudis financed the September 11th Al-Qaeda stuff, is it possible that bad actor Saudis financed this too? And use Saudi equipment that was stationed in Mesa, Arizona at the Boeing helicopter factory. So that's the strange coincidence with Doug Haig, the guy that sold him the ammunition, is Doug Haig just happens to work at the same factory where the Saudi helicopters are based. Strange coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's where they came from. They came from where Doug Haig works, in Mesa, Arizona, at the Boeing helicopter factory. And based on the stuff that we've been listening to recently, it sounds like maybe these things were equipped with some stealth technology. These may have been stealth little birds, because they are quiet. They are quiet. So that wouldn't surprise me.
And they exist. I mean,
and they do exist. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Stealth technology on the little bird does exist. So, based on Clarissa's statements that she saw them hanging off the sides, facing out, facing down, it's the classic configuration on a little bird. So, it seems like that's what she saw. And the fact that they are so quiet compared to the sound of the gunfire, it's telling. Now, there are moments where they are overhead, and we do hear the rotors. But because they're traveling, you only hear them for a few seconds, and then they're gone. So